38. Okay, welcome back, everybody. We are on item 7.1, so board chair report. And I don't have anything to add. It's for information, unless anyone has anything, any comments or questions. No questions or comments, so we can move to superintendent report 7.2. Charlie?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to highlight a few items in the report as per usual. In the area of faith leadership, I will let trustees know that we've had a very positive response from schools to support Sacred Heart Church of First Peoples in Edmonton on their rebuild. So again, I just want to ask, and give maybe notice to you, Madam Chair, that there will be an opportunity there to present those funds to Father Susi once received. But very, very big support. And what's interesting is many of the schools are carrying that work forward into next year. So for example, on Orange Shirt Day, they're going to donate, for example, a lot of the schools, $2 from each shirt sale to that church. So a lot of that will continue as we move forward, which is nice. Area 2 or dimension 2, the first bullet, I would like to mention to the board that the work with Kevin Cameron and the support for Christ the King School continues into next year. So we've booked Kevin Cameron for 2 days next year, one in September, which is kind of to help the school kind of get going again on, supporting teachers and students who may still be dealing with the effects of the tragedy. And the second day that's been booked is in early March. So Kevin Cameron has often mentioned that the anniversary date of a traumatic event is often a trigger for staff and students. So we've got Kevin booked at the start of March next year as well to kind of do some advanced work with the staff in anticipation of that anniversary date. The third bullet in the second item is a year-end postcard token of appreciation. I wanted to kind of give you a little bit of a heads up on this. So Caitlin and myself have been working. We're going to send every staff member a postcard. And it's basically saying thank you for the work this year. We know that it's been a tough year. And it's going to say, please accept this token as a sign of appreciation. And McDonald's has graciously made a donation. We had offered to buy, and then all of a sudden the owner said, no, we'll donate it. But there'll be a McFlurry for each staff member as well as a coffee and donut. So it's a small something, but we're hoping that it's received with the intention. And that postcard it says on behalf of the board and senior administration. So it's coming from you, it's coming from us as senior admin, basically everybody in this meeting. So if you hear about it, you'll know what it is, and Caitlin will send you a copy of that postcard right away. Those will be delivered to schools in the next day or two. In the fourth standard, visionary leadership, I just will mention, I'm sure that you're probably aware from Sean's notice, but Chris Zarski is on a secondment with the Central Alberta Regional Consortium, the Learning Consortium. And that is right now for a year. So while she's on leave, we do have a new director hired, and that's Christy Smith, who's coming to us from Elk Island Catholic. So we're excited to receive her. I would say that one of Christy's strengths, just so you're aware, is her work with First Nation Métis Inuit. So she does travel around Alberta, presenting on behalf of the Alberta Teachers Association in that area. So we're excited to continue. Chris had a really good knowledge and relationship with Musqueam, and we know Christy will just enhance and build on that. So we're excited about that. Next, I'm going to ask Lori to maybe just speak to the first bullet 6. And you heard Ed in his budget speak to the IF&E grant, and that we had some leftover money and that was carrying into next year. And Lori will maybe just give you a little bit of an update on what we've got planned for that.
So we do have this extra funding left over from the IF&E grant that we couldn't expend last year, just due to COVID, which is the phrase that everybody's using these days. Essentially, what we decided was that I met with administrators, and there's two sort of portions to this grant. The larger chunk of this, what we're going to use this grant for, is to support students within St. Augustine and Sacred Heart School. And it's going to be essentially a First Nations Métis Inuit success coach that will help work with students and families, help support the Indigenous population within the schools. And then the much smaller portion of that is to help support schools in bringing in elders into the schools. So just to help with any honorariums or et cetera that are needed, because they are board priorities in supporting First Nations Métis Inuit students, and as well, and one of the strategies is bringing in elders. So this, what we've come up with does support the education plan and the goals there.
So those are thank you, Lori. Those were the items that I was going to highlight. So again, I'm happy to take any questions on any of the items.
Question.
Yeah, go ahead, Trustee Eflin.
Will this, I hope this is open to all the schools, that they may assess some of these elders to teach some knowledge.
That is correct.
Okay.
Trustee Eflin. So the elder piece is open to all schools. However, the two support workers are limited to Sacred Heart and St. Augustine.
Yes, that I got that, but I'm thinking about the elder piece. Okay, thank you.
Any other comments or questions? So I was just going to mention a couple of things. So I really appreciate the YEG Spark connection. I'm familiar with that, organization or what they do, and I think it's really neat, really an excellent connection. And the Kevin Cameron support, will that be in person by then, or is the plan to be in person?
That is the plan.
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah, that would really be helpful for, okay. And the advocacy for students with a VITRA flag, like how is that advocacy happening, or like, is it not happening at all? Like when students move around, and I thought if they were part of a VITRA that it was shared knowledge.
Yeah, so there is a current process in Alberta. I was advocating to no success, I might add. It didn't kind of fall on, it kind of fell on deaf ears. But currently, if we do a VITRA, the school administrator is supposed to put in that student's CUME file a letter that says a VITRA has been done on this student. Then a principal of the incoming student sees that and then can contact the previous school and say, can you give me some information about this? That's kind of what's in place now. But as you can imagine, letters get lost. Letters may not even get put in the CUME file. What I was advocating for with the government was more in line with the BC model. And that's in PASI, in their student information system. There's an actual flag that stays there in the information system that follows that student around. Again, it doesn't have the information. Now, the response I got back from Alberta Ed was that PASI does have the ability to upload the VITRA letter into the system as well, but I just don't think it's as smooth as the BC model. But those in power at Alberta Ed don't seem to be eager to change that, so that's just kind of fallen there. But so we'll just rely on the current model.
It did seem like a good point for sure. And I had a question about the new director, but you explained that already. And just a thank you to Karen Dragon, because she would have been a part of some hard stuff this past year. So just passing on a thank you to her. And one thing I had, do we know the diploma participation of our students? Oh, sorry, Trustee Tegwood.
Liz had her hand up too.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I
So I was just going to finish with the one question about diploma exams. Do we know what kind of participation we had with students?
Lori, do you have any numbers on that?
Not yet. Yeah. Okay. I was just curious. Okay. Trustee Sirwa?
Thank you. Yes, I was just going to say, I thought the postcard idea was fantastic. And the other thing, Charlie, is you mentioned the Kamloops issue, but I wasn't sure what that was about. I mean, I know what it's about, but I didn't know what your comment was about.
Sorry, I didn't catch the first part of your question. If you could repeat it, please.
You mentioned in the report something about Kamloops, but I wasn't sure what it was.
Okay, so that was just working with Michelle and Caitlin regarding the unmarked grave with the 215 Indigenous children. So the division did put out a statement on that. So that was what that was referring to.
Oh, okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Trustee Tegwood?
Yes, my question was about Reflection Day and Learning Day. Do you know if they will be in person yet, and do you have any dates planned?
The Reflection Day is later on in the agenda. I'll speak to it there. And why don't I just touch on Learning Day at the same time?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, they kind of go nicely together.
Okay, I'll add that on. Yeah, it's on 7.7. Okay, any other comments or questions? Okay, thank you very much, Charlie. We're in June and we're coming to a break.
Madam Chair, just by way of a quick follow-up on your question, right now it looks like we have 3 students writing diploma exams this quarter.
Okay. All right, thank you. Okay, 7.3. Ed?
Now I'm back.
Okay.
So I'm just going to highlight just a couple of items of significance. The first one we have to update. When I submitted my report, I have continued dialogue with the town of Drayton Valley on the space in Holy Trinity Academy. I actually just this morning heard from the town of Drayton Valley. We had extended an interest to lease that area. They had asked if we'd be interested in a lease. We kind of put back to them what we would do given our restrictions in our budget, what we had committed to. So they've come back this morning to say that they've agreed to a lease that means that we absorb all the utility costs for that area, and then the amount that we had allocated towards support of the library annually, given that the library is no longer operational in there. And by way of email, they've accepted that rates. I haven't seen any details, but according to board policy, the board would approve a lease moving forward. So I believe that that's really good news in terms of getting that acceptance, getting it kind of within our budgetary constraints. And the next thing is looking at kind of a time frame to make sure that they're not wanting to engage in a super long-term lease. I think in consultation with the superintendent, we'd be looking for a lease of about 3 years at this point in time from them. But again, this is kind of preliminary information. And as long as the board is supportive, we'll kind of work with the town about formalizing that lease and then moving it to board approval. Hopefully we can get it in August, but everything looks optimistic at this point in time.
Oh, that's excellent news. Excellent. Really good for that school.
Literally, the email came about, I think, about 9:15.
Yeah, and that was my question on your report. Where are we at?
Yeah.
So that's excellent. Thank you. Thank you for working on that and keeping that communication going. Thank you.
Certainly. Again, with the City of Leduc on the school site committee, we've finalized iterations of that agreement, and I think we're just in the process of making sure we've got a final document. And my next report will have a copy of that, what that document looks like, to update the board. It just reiterates what we've been doing in practice and what we had in a limited kind of agreement, and expands it significantly and more closely aligns with what's required under the joint use and planning. We don't have the joint use component yet, but we certainly have the planning point now done. And then the last item I want to highlight is with regards to our transportation contracts. We had 4 contracts that were expiring in our transportation services at the end of this year. We've now extended those for an additional 3 years. And I've got agreement from all 4 of those contractors. So we are, all of our contracts now are good except for one until 2023 at least. And then we've got some renewals happening, and then we may reevaluate to see where the industry at, where our rates are at, and whether we want to go with a larger, rather than a renewal, look at a larger RFP process at that point. But it's nice when you have an ongoing relationship and you can discuss about issues and work with your contractors. And unless there's a need to move from them, whether it be price or whether it be service, you try and maintain that relationship.
Yes, thank you. And we just really appreciate that, that there's lots of good relationship between our transportation people. Thank you.
So that's all I wanted to highlight at this point on my report. Are there any questions?
I just have a quick question.
Go ahead, Trustee Afan.
On the review of the CTS space by St. Vital, this is the 2nd year, right, since they started using that?
3rd year.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Do we have any struggles? Do you know?
Again, when we renew that request, it's in conjunction and with the support of the administrator on site.
Okay.
So generally, it's a formality that comes from their jurisdiction to ours, but I don't agree to anything without our principal identifying any issues that maybe have to be resolved. But in terms of how it actually, the mechanics of the days that they've requested, and those type of things, that's left between the 2 administrators. But no, we've made sure that there's no disadvantage to our school.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ed. Any other comments from anybody? Sorry, I can't see all the people.
Donna has a question.
Okay, go ahead, Trustee Tugwood.
I just have, I'm curious about the, you said assist with changes to custodial and classroom disinfecting protocols. Were there quite a few changes made because things were getting better, or was it just minor things?
What we were looking at was the product that we used in the classroom with students. There was some concerns that the Alberta Health Services wanted to reinforce, even though we had hand sanitizer entering the classroom, leaving the classroom, at the entranceway of the door of the school. We had custodial staff doing antiviral cleaning throughout the day in bathrooms, hallways, high touch areas, those type of things. Alberta Health Services wanted us to step up the product that our teachers could use in the classroom. And so we did some research to try and find a product that wouldn't require a lot of intensive occupational health and safety training for use, and that would be viable given the classroom circumstance. So facilities, of course, is taxed in their processes. So I was kind of just lending some assistance and some guidance and formulating some documentation to go out to schools with regards to that product as we moved away from the one we were using to something else.
Okay, thank you. I was just curious about that.
All right, and then the only other thing that's in my area for report is the third quarter financial report. Just going to just switch documents there. I'm not going to go through it in detail. I think you've had enough numbers from Ed for today. Not to say that I'm not willing to answer questions. With regard to the report, what I'm going to focus on is where we see our current budget results based on the third quarter projections. So at the end of the year, we're expecting our revenues for the most part to be same as what we had projected. Again, our provincial revenues are dictated by projected enrollment, so they don't change that much. Where we see more fluctuation is on the school generated side. Some of the revenues that we didn't anticipate from the fall budget. The spring budget, of course, did not include any aspects with regard to the federal COVID money, which was substantial, over $2 million. And those aspects. What we were at projected, though, was that we'd have about a $600,000 deficit in the fall. Right now, we're looking at about an $800,000 surplus, given the year on how it will finish out. That figure, of course, includes amortization, depreciation, those type of things. So what I like to do is also focus on where we are going to finish off the year. I'm going to go to the last page of that. So our unrestricted surplus, again, where we started the year at was at that 993,000. Right now, we're projecting that we'd be finishing off at about $1.8 million. In the budget report, I used a conservative figure of 1.5. And so there's a slight variance because I didn't use all the assumptions that we used in the third quarter report when I formulated the budget. So we're still kind of in that iteration of we're living with this year. We know we've got some expenditures that schools are making towards the end as they see where their budgets are landing up. And in our budget talks, we had kind of assumed that as well. So this figure at 1.8 might be a little optimistic at this point. And again, when we report in September, we'll have a fourth quarter financial statement that's, I believe, will be far stronger. But again, we're going to be showing some positive, and certainly an increase from where we were at the end of last year. But we've also made some commitments for expenditures next year that will be supported and utilizing some of those unrestricted surpluses. So that's what I would call the quick review of what our third quarter financial looks like. Are there any questions? What I'm going to do is I'll stop the share. If you want me to bring it up, then I can. Just makes it easier to see everybody.
I guess I did have a question about, I don't know if you're able to tell me or maybe not, but I did see that you did share the legacy fund from the summer games
Yes.
with trustees, and just wondering where that's at and when it will expire or be gone or why it's just not moving, I guess.
Well, we've had the most movement under the legacy fund that we've ever had.
Okay.
We've actually had, I'm trying to remember where it is in the report offhand. There it is. It is in the deferred revenue. So on page 3 of the report, the 4th line down. I'm just going to share my screen so everybody sees what I'm talking about.
Oh yeah, there it is.
So there's $8,000 that was left at the end of our last fiscal year. And then we've been doing a couple of payments out. $6,000 was at the ending balance at the end of this first quarter. We also got a nominee out of, I believe it's St. Augustine school that's not recorded here because we hadn't finalized the documentation to pay that out. So it is dropping much more quickly, and we have tried to make sure that schools are aware of it and making those awards. and we have opened it up division-wide.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other comments or questions? It seems we're on track. That's how I seen it. And yeah,
We're a little bit better than on track, but
Yeah.
I think primarily due to those extra infusions for the pandemic response that we didn't have to use our own budgeted funds for, which has been a great help to the division and will allow us to do some things next year.
right. Okay, thank you. No other comments or questions? Okay, so we are at 7.4, but I thought maybe we'd take like a 10-minute break. Come back at 2:15
Sounds good.
and hopefully we can